Formula One returns to our lives this weekend with the French Grand Prix. Now, I know you're hearing those words and thinking, oh God, because the French Grand Prix, let's be honest, the circuit Paul Ricard is not exactly renowned for having a lot of thrilling races. What's more, it isn't exactly the easiest circuit on the eye, as you can see. Of course, I'm pretty sure you haven't forgotten those red and blue lines. Not exactly the best sight for the eyes. And again, it's a circuit that is a little on the slow and boring side. So obviously, it can sometimes be a little bit of a chore to get through this Grand Prix. But hey, any race weekend is better than no race weekend if you ask me. So I personally am pretty glad that we're going to be seeing some Formula One action this week as well as the next, but we'll get to the next one in a bit. Let's focus on the here and now. I am Shane Dias, you're watching Sports Today, and today we are going to address the 5 major burning questions that are staring in our faces ahead of the French Grand Prix. Now, of course, the first question which I feel is pertinent to ask is, can Sergio Perez still consider himself as being in the title hunt? Now, obviously, it's not been an ideal last few races for Checo. He's ended up having 2 DNFs in that point, and he's seen he's currently 57 points behind Max Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship standings. But ahead of this race weekend, he's come out saying that the team, as far as he is concerned, cannot be affording another DNF, and that he still sees himself being in the championship hunt. Now, obviously, that's an interesting stance, but I would say that it's a good thing that Checo actually has this confidence that if in the right circumstances, he can still actually go out there and potentially try and beat Max Verstappen. Again, don't forget, they're an equal machinery, and Checo this year has looked a much different driver than he did in 2021. But of course, if Checo is indeed to stay in that championship fight, he'll need a good result this weekend. And if not a win, at the very least, he'll need a podium finish. Preferably, obviously, a win, and particularly if he's able to beat his teammate. But whether or not that happens is something that we don't quite know yet, because it's not just simply about the 2 Red Bulls racing each other. Don't forget, there is Ferrari and potentially Mercedes who could be coming in to spoil the party as well. First, we're going to talk about the prancing horse and, of course, Charles Leclerc. Now, normally speaking, Leclerc has had some bad luck this time around in this season, because he started well, had a few DNFs due to engine failures and everything, and then he finally ended up snapping that winless streak in the last race which took place in Austria. Obviously, Leclerc would be hoping that he can build on that, and he might have one less competitor in the form of teammate Carlos Sainz, not necessarily because Ferrari has taken a decision to back Leclerc, but because Ferrari might actually have to change Sainz's engine unit. So if they are to do that, it means that having already exceeded the maximum number of allocations of that particular part at this point in time, Sainz will have to take an engine penalty and may not be a factor in the front of the grid. Of course, there is also a disadvantage in that regard, that Leclerc will be waging a lone battle up against both Red Bulls, but the cynics among you might say that he's really been doing that for most of the season. But even keeping that aside, Leclerc would want that he can get another race win this weekend, because again, those few DNFs which took place really hurt him. It saw Max build up quite a nice lead, and in fact, not only saw Max build up a lead, Max was trailing Leclerc in the early stages of the season, and Leclerc would be desperate to claw his way back into championship contention. But as I said, not going to be necessarily that easy, because, well, you also have a Mercedes team who are bringing plenty of upgrades to Paul Ricard. And not to forget that this man here, Lewis Hamilton, will be making a rare feat, or will be accomplishing a rare feat when he takes to the track this weekend. He will be making his 300th Grand Prix start. Now, bear in mind, he'll become only the 6th driver to actually accomplish this. The other 5 being, of course, Michael Schumacher, Rubens Barrichello, Jenson Button, Kimi Raikkonen, and Fernando Alonso. Now, from those 5, obviously, only Alonso is still active, and probably not going to be a factor in this weekend's race at least. But for Hamilton and for Mercedes, this could be a very, very important weekend. They have in recent times gotten ahead of their porpoising problems, but their car still is the 3rd fastest car on the grid. However, if those updates which they are bringing to France work as planned, we might very well be seeing a 3-way race for the win. And that's exactly what we want, right? We want to see competitive wheel-to-wheel racing. And if that has to happen this time around, we need Mercedes to kind of pull their socks up. They are bringing a ton of upgrades. Here's hoping that for if you're a Mercedes fan, that they work, because obviously this season has been a bit of a struggle and has been more about picking up points when others are losing out. Others being, of course, especially Ferrari with their reliability issues. But that's not the only major talking points that we can be, addressing. There is, of course, a certain Daniel Ricciardo who would be all too keen to come out all guns blazing in this particular Grand Prix. Remember, he had a torrid time in the Austrian Grand Prix, and before and after that, there have been plenty of rumors swirling both about his future within McLaren as well as in the sport itself. Of course, he ended up putting all of that speculation to bed by putting a statement out on social media saying, "I'm not leaving the team, I'm not leaving the sport, I intend honoring my contract, and I will see you at France." Well, we are at France at long last. Can Ricciardo actually turn his fortunes around, though? That's something that remains to be seen, because again, that one race win at Monza last year aside, Ricciardo's had an absolutely torrid time at McLaren, and it is fair to say that it has hampered his standing as a driver. Remember, he's an 8-time race winner, but that goodwill only takes you so far when you are being consistently outpaced by a driver who's much younger than you and who's also not won a single race yet. So can this be the weekend that Ricciardo finally starts to find some mojo? I mean, we've been saying that for a long time, but here's hoping that the Aussie can get it together and get a good result at France. The last major talking point that we would be talking about is, of course, Sebastian Vettel. Now, this is a special weekend in some ways for Aston Martin, because this would mark their 100th year in Formula One in that sense. Again, remember, that Vettel was driving around an old F1 car on this circuit Paul Ricard as like in an exhibition type of thing. That's kind of become his thing, because even at Silverstone he was driving an old Williams. But more importantly, Vettel has confirmed that he does plan to continue racing into next year. Now that's obviously key, because it is worth remembering that his current contract with Aston Martin only lasts till this year. So that means that he's out of contract after this particular season, and so far there have been no major whisperings about which team would be keen to take on the 4-time world champion. Of course, Formula One silly season, or the times when drivers change teams, is such that sometimes there will be moves made completely out of the blue that no one could see coming. But Vettel can't really be focused on that right now. What he can focus on is getting a decent result at this race. Can that happen? Again, not too sure. The Aston Martin, since their upgrades at Barcelona, have somehow become worse, which really is saying something, that you're bringing in upgrades and making your car slower. So whether or not they can fix those issues going into this race weekend, they would hope that they can, because a lot of that would be contingent on them getting to potentially keep Seb, or even keep their hopes of getting a decent finish in the Constructors' Championship at the end of the season. And those are my 5 talking points ahead of what should be an interesting race at France. I know those are terms that are not normally used interchangeably, but there should be quite a few things happening, enough moving parts to keep any kind of fan interested in this weekend's race. Also worth noting, temperatures at France are pretty high, so you could be in for a race with a lot of tire changes. So pit strategy going to be key, and we might just end up seeing a little bit of a shuffling in the order as a result. Hence, I'm excited. But what about you guys? Do you think we can in for an interesting race weekend? Let me know in the comments. And thank you so much for joining us. Please don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And last but not the least, tap the bell icon so that you know every single time we're going live or uploading a video for you guys. As always, I'm grateful you've joined me. My name is Shane Dias, and I hope to see you again very soon. Bye-bye.